Hunter is born on
January 4,
2016.
2016.
Which,
C-section.
yeah, which was, we had no medical indications that anything would be wrong from all the ultrasounds, from all the doctor's visits. The expectation was, okay, she's
growing good.
She's doing well. She's a little twisted up in the womb. We're gonna have to pull her out, C-section, but no problem. So she goes in, does the C-section. We're there. Doctor pulls her out. I cut the cord, and he looks at me and he goes, "There's a soft palate midline communication, which is basically a cleft. It's nothing you could see, but it's going to prevent her from being able to possibly swallow very easily." So we're new parents, and baby is with us the first night. The second night they take her because her oxygen saturations, she turned blue. So they couldn't understand why her oxygen wasn't staying up in the 90s, 100s where it's supposed to be. Her heart's racing, she's uncomfortable. So she was living with a tube down her nose, oxygen, and eventually something just still wasn't right. She was aspirating, so when she was swallowing, when she could swallow, it would go into her lungs. We couldn't find out. So we're doing from one hospital to another, and finally we get to a big university hospital in Chicago, and they do some of the imaging testing, and they come out and they say, "Oh, we got a problem. She has something called a tracheoesophageal fistula, H-type." So at 3 months, we now know that Hunter has severe acid reflux. She has a solitary kidney. She has a hemivertebrate. She has a right upper rib deformity. She has this tracheoesophageal fistula, and she has this cleft in her palate. List was getting bigger and bigger. Just to put it simple, the fistula is a communication from your esophagus to your trachea that's not supposed to be there. So when you swallow, the contents of your swallowing goes right into your lungs.
Like if she was feeding, and this is before the fistula, we even got the fistula fixed at 5 months. There was times where she'd be in the bassinet next to us and she'd be turning blue. So, I mean, there was scary moments where you're having to pick your child up and stop her from choking because she's choking on all the aspiration and stuff that she's got going on. And that happened a few times before they put the Nissen in at 3 months. And just wishing I could take the place of my child and if I could get all this done to me rather than her.
The timeline goes, that we learned she has all these problems, and we learned that, in Chicago, they're going to try to fix it. Well, when they came out with the photographs that I have, and they show us these photos, we tried to fix it, it didn't work. And then we're going back in, we're going to try to fix it again. And hey, look at these photos. This hole that she has is so large, our equipment, our brushes, the diameters aren't big enough to even scrape up the hole. The hole's too big. So we don't have the right equipment. They don't make the right equipment to fix your daughter. We saw probably 15 to 20 doctors. And then we went, our journey led us to Denver, because there were 2 people in the world that could possibly fix Hunter, one in Tokyo, one in Denver. So long story short is we were in Denver for about 6 weeks. He went in a second time. His ego told him that she's not going to best me 2 times in a row. So he went in and did a little bit longer procedure, and he was a little more conservative in a lot of the stuff he did, and he was really aggressive on separating this thing from, severing that fistula and layering, rather than fat tissue in between it, muscle tissue that's live muscle tissue, and then stapling and sewing and layering, and then he says it's fixed. It's 2019. It took us from 2013 to 2019, all these roadblocks in the middle, but we've made it. We're here. We're now focusing on improving Hunter's speech, right? right? Because we want her to be able to enunciate words. So we go in to have her tonsils and adenoids removed in preparation for this larger speech surgery, not fistula surgery. Speech surgery. So we're sitting in the waiting room. Doc comes out. Got bad news. The fistula has come back to life, and he shows me the pictures and the video. He actually had a video of him doing the procedure, it opening up and spewing all this, just horribleness. So our hearts dropped. Kind of jump back into the hospital story. So we're there at noon, getting ready to go back for the surgery. So we're leaving the waiting room. Hunter's in my hands, and out walks in the elevator two of the old guys from my prayer breakfast. And I'm like, what are you guys doing here? And they happen to be pastors that are like been in the business for 40 something years. I was like kind of embarrassed, like, but they just prayed with us, kind of did this huddle, prayed in front of the, all the other people in this waiting room. And then pastor whips out the oil, anoints Hunter with oil. And I'm a little bit like, what's going on now? So, but it was really cool. It was really cool. Then we went back. So they were there for a split second. They actually walked off the elevator as we were walking by, and it all just happened right there. So it was just kind of meant to be, one of those God things, Sitting back pre-op talking for 5 minutes, 10 minutes is typical. You sign your disclosures, they tell you what you're about to do, tell you the risks involved, but he sat and talked to us about everything, about what this road may look like with Hunter, not for the speech, but for this fistula. We're going to go in, we're going to reassess, see if it's worse than it was, because it was kind of starting to open, and it could just continue to open, right, and get larger and larger. So he prepared us for possibly having to go to Boston for surgery, maybe back to Denver, all the options. We talked about all of it. Pretty scary stuff. Meantime, Hunter is sitting in her hospital bed as comfortable as can be and just watching cartoons. And
the docs would come in and we're like, is everything okay? And Hunter's like, I sick.
Yeah.
And we're like, you're not sick, you're well, you're just in the hospital to get surgery. Don't tell them you're sick or the surgery doesn't happen.
Yeah. It's pretty...
I mean,
she was okay with what was about to happen because she's been down this road.
She was just
before.
thinking her tonsils are getting taken out again. So she's at the stage where she's remembering things. So
yeah.
She remembers the tonsillectomy.
She says, I'm not well. I'm ready to go. And she knew she was going back for her surgery. So she just went with the nurses, and that's probably, as being a parent, the most difficult thing you could probably go through is when you're letting your kid go back into the operating room and you don't know if you're going to see him again. That moment, that sucks. That is the definition of sucks. And this is surgery number 10. So eventually they left. It was an hour or two later they had to go. So Wes took off. These other two guys took off, and we're sitting there with her stepmom, who came down from Chicago to help with the recovery, and see the doc walking out with his photographs in his hand, and I know that walk, so it's a million mile walk from point A to point B. The time he gets there and what happens in your mind. So
I watched that door, that whole. I can't talk to anybody. I'm just like, I might talk to my family back home, but I'm just like, I stare at the door. I'm like,
yeah,
that's where I get anxious.
So he comes out, and he's playing it cool. He was like, he goes, well, opens up the pictures. He goes, this is her airway. These are her vocal cords. This is her bronchia, and this is the fistula. But it's not there anymore. It's taken care of. So we didn't have to do anything with that. I've studied this stuff, and I've looked at this picture, and I know all the different photos I've collected, and I'm looking at this thing, and
it's not even been
there. The interesting thing is, if you can imagine, there's a hole, right? And then the hole was cut off and reduced, but when they did that, it created like this crater when he came out with those photos, that whole site was smooth as a piece of paper. I was in the car for a while, kind of shaking, like looking at this thing, and I'm like, can't deny what happened here. This is exactly what we asked for. I didn't know how the prayers spread, but she had people praying for her from Australia, around the globe, the UK, Asia, all the Americas, from coast to coast.
I can't even remember at that
It was
point.
God.
It was like,
it was God. It was a miracle.
I was just
You can't
like,
deny it.